150 million years ago. The world is a vast ancient floodplain, ruled by giants. But this is not the age of Tyrannosaurus rex. This is an older, wilder time, and the throne belongs to a different kind of killer. A predator whose ferocity was etched into its very bones. The undisputed lion of the Jurassic, Allosaurus. Its reign was long and violent, its dominance absolute. So why did it vanish? Now, let's open the case file on one of prehistory's greatest unsolved mysteries. Our victim profile takes us to the late Jurassic period and a sprawling environment known to paleontologists as the Morrison Formation. This wasn't a lush jungle, but a vast, semi-arid world of river plains and fern savannas, stretching across what is now the western United States. It was a landscape of extremes, with a long dry season and a dramatic wet season that brought torrential floods. This was the arena for some of the largest land animals of all time. Herds of colossal sauropods like Diplodocus and Camarasaurus shook the earth, while armored titans like Stegosaurus roamed the low-lying vegetation. To survive here, a predator couldn't just be big. It had to be a master of the hunt. When we examine the fossil evidence, we are looking at the schematics for a perfect Jurassic killer. Allosaurus fragilis, the different lizard, was a masterpiece of predatory engineering. Its skull, while massive, was a paradox of lightweight construction and brute force, full of openings that reduced weight without sacrificing strength. And inside, a mouth filled with dozens of curved, serrated teeth, constantly replaced to ensure they were always razor sharp. It stood on two powerful legs, a bipedal chassis built for pursuit. Its arms weren't the tiny appendages of later tyrannosaurs. They were long, muscular, and tipped with three massive eagle-like talons. This was a creature designed to grapple, slash, and bleed its colossal prey. The bones of Allosaurus tell a story of a brutally violent life. We find countless pathological fossils, healed fractures, impact wounds, and deep gouges that match the teeth of other Allosaurus. They fought each other, and they fought their prey with reckless abandon. Fossil evidence of bite marks on sauropod bones and a Stegosaurus tail spike, wound found in an Allosaurus vertebra, confirm it was tackling the giants of its day. For 10 million years, across North America and even into Europe, Allosaurus was the apex predator. Its dynasty seemed unbreakable, its position at the top of the food chain secure. And that makes its disappearance all the more baffling. How does a ruler this successful get dethroned? To solve the disappearance of a king, we must investigate the collapse of its kingdom. The trail for Allosaurus doesn't lead to a single explosive event. There is no impact crater, no obvious murder weapon. Instead, our crime scene is the rock itself, the silent, geological ledger that marks the boundary between the Jurassic and the Cretaceous periods, around 145 million years ago. When we examine the fossil beds of the Morrison Formation, the evidence is clear. Allosaurus is everywhere, the most common large predator right up to the final layer of the Jurassic, the Tithonian Age. And then, it's gone. The dynasty that ruled for 10 million years vanishes from the record. To find the killer, we have to look at the world that was changing around it. Our investigation opens with a prime suspect, a force with the power and motive to destabilize an entire ecosystem. Radical climate change. For millions of years, the world of Allosaurus had been a predictable one. The Morrison was a vast, semi-arid basin, characterized by long dry seasons and short, intense wet seasons. The landscape was dominated by open fern savannas and gallery forests along the rivers. This was the arena Allosaurus was engineered for. Open country, perfect for spotting and running down the colossal herbivores that formed its prey base. It was a stable system, and Allosaurus was its chief enforcer. But when our geological forensics team analyzes the upper layers of the Morrison, the story begins to change. The composition of the rock itself shifts. We see fewer signs of ephemeral lakes and dry floodplains, and more evidence of permanent river channels, swamps, and wetlands. The sedimentology points to a world that was becoming significantly wetter. This wasn't just a few rainy seasons. It was a fundamental climatic shift. At the same time, global sea levels were on the rise. A shallow interior seaway, known to geologists as the Sundance Sea, had retreated, but now the waters were beginning to press inland again, raising the water table and increasing humidity. The arid savannas were slowly being replaced by lush coastal plains and denser forests. For a predator like Allosaurus, built for pursuit in open spaces, its hunting grounds were literally shrinking, being choked by new, thicker vegetation. Its entire strategic advantage was being systematically dismantled by the planet itself. The motive of our first suspect becomes clear: to create an environment where the old king could no longer rule effectively. This leads us directly to our second suspect, a killer that worked in tandem with the first: the collapse of the food chain. An apex predator, no matter how powerful, is utterly dependent on the prey that sustains it. And the prey of Allosaurus was legendary. The Morrison ecosystem was defined by its mega herbivores, the long-necked sauropods like Apatosaurus and Diplodocus, and the iconic armored dinosaur, Stegosaurus. These creatures were the bedrock of the food web, and Allosaurus was the specialized predator that had evolved over millions of years to hunt them. Fossil evidence, from bite marks on bones to violent encounters preserved in stone, confirms this predator-prey relationship was the central pillar of the entire ecosystem. As we track the faunal evidence through the late Jurassic, we witness this pillar begin to crumble. The changing climate, our first suspect, was having a devastating effect on the plant life. The hardy, drought-resistant flora of the old Morrison was giving way to new types of vegetation that thrived in the wetter conditions. This botanical revolution had a catastrophic knock-on effect. The giant sauropods, specialists in feeding on specific types of Jurassic plants, began to decline in both number and diversity. Most significantly, Stegosaurus, a key prey item, completely vanishes from the fossil record at the Jurassic-Cretaceous boundary. The investigation reveals a slow-motion assassination. The climate altered the menu, and the great herbivores began to starve. For Allosaurus, this was a death sentence delivered in stages. First, its preferred hunting grounds disappeared. Then, the prey it was custom-built to hunt began to vanish. It was a perfect storm of ecological failure. Imagine a lion, the king of the savannah, suddenly forced to hunt in a dense jungle where its prey, the great herds of wildebeest and zebra, have been replaced by smaller, faster animals that can hide in the undergrowth. Its strength and power would count for little. It would be a king without a kingdom, a hunter without a hunt. The case against these two co-conspirators, climate change and prey collapse, is overwhelmingly strong. But the investigation reveals one final piece of the puzzle. An ecosystem abhors a vacuum. The decline of the Allosaurus dynasty and its prey didn't leave an empty world. Instead, the changing environment created an opportunity. As the old giants faded away, new types of herbivores began to appear. More nimble ornithopods and the first armored ankylosaurs. And where new prey appears, new predators are sure to follow. The fall of Allosaurus wasn't just an extinction. It was a power transition. The world that had forged the Jurassic's greatest killer had ceased to exist. And in the new world of the early Cretaceous, a different kind of predator would be required for the throne. The evidence shows Allosaurus wasn't defeated by a stronger foe in battle, but was instead rendered obsolete by a world that had simply moved on. So, the verdict. After piecing together the geological and fossil evidence, the case of the vanished Allosaurus is closed. But there is no single culprit to name, no lone assassin. The investigation reveals a far more intricate plot. A slow, systematic execution carried out by the planet itself. The killer was a conspiracy of codependent factors, a cascade of environmental failures that dismantled the Jurassic King's world piece by piece. The climate shift was the trigger, the first domino to fall. The move to a wetter, more humid world was the initial assault, fundamentally altering the landscape and attacking the very base of the food web, the plants. This environmental attack enabled the second phase of the kill, the starvation of the great herbivores, the disappearance of giants like Stegosaurus, and the decline of the massive sauropods wasn't a separate event. It was a direct consequence of the changing flora. This two-pronged attack created a fatal trap for the predator at the top. Allosaurus was a specialist, a hunter supremely adapted for a world of open plains and giant prey. And when that world vanished, its evolutionary strengths became its greatest weaknesses. We can now reconstruct the final days of the Allosaurus dynasty. We see a powerful hunter, a master of its domain, stalking through a world it no longer recognizes. The familiar fern savannas have become dense, wet forests that hinder its pursuit. It hunts for the colossal sauropods that once defined its existence, only to find them increasingly scarce. Its formidable teeth and claws, perfectly designed to tear through the flesh of giants, are useless against an intangible enemy. It cannot fight a changing climate. It cannot bite a collapsing food web. Allosaurus wasn't outcompeted by a superior predator. It was rendered obsolete. Therefore, the final verdict is death by ecosystem collapse. The official cause is the complete and irreversible transformation of its habitat, which in turn triggered the disappearance of its primary food source. The undisputed lion of the Jurassic wasn't brought down in a great battle. It was simply left behind, a relic of a bygone era. Its reign ended not with a roar, but with the silence of an empty world it was no longer built to rule. The case of the Allosaurus extinction is closed. The verdict shows that a dynasty's end doesn't always come from a dramatic cataclysm, but from the quiet, relentless pressure of a changing world. It is a stark reminder that no predator is too powerful to fall, and no kingdom is too mighty to crumble when the very foundation of its environment shifts beneath its feet.